I'm going to call the honourable member for Goldstein.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and it's a privilege to be able to speak on this bill and make some cursory remarks before the 90-second statements. And to begin by saying that there are a number of sections in this bill that I support in principle, but I'm concerned about how it will play out in practice. I have deep support for the stapling measures within the bill, which will enable for duplicate accounts to be removed so that young Australians, when they enter into the workforce, don't have their superannuation eaten away in the fees and insurance premiums and administration fees by principally industry super funds, particularly Rest and Host Plus. Having consolidation around those accounts so that the money is saved for young Australians' retirement is of critical importance, and I support that. But I am concerned about where it might lead. And I draw reference to the recent KPMG Super Insights 2021 report, and I quote it, "On the completion of the currently announced merger activity based on 30 June 2020 data, 76% of Australian assets under management and 77% of member accounts will be managed by the top 12 funds, all with assets under management greater than $50 billion. Because what we are creating by not fixing a broken system, and superannuation is a broken system designed to favour the few at the expense of the many, is a concentration of economic capital and with it power, where people are able to bypass our liberal democracy to impose matters through the imposition on companies, and particularly publicly listed companies, which means that individual investors will lose their capacity, their clout and their say within businesses. Of course, unelected boards that run these superannuation funds, unelected, unaccountable boards, will be able to have a disproportionate say on the future direction of our country and the operations of our country in a way that used to come into this place, Deputy Speaker, this place where we pass laws to decide the future direction. They will be able to bypass our liberal democracy. So it's kind of ironic, actually, the Labor Party opposes this legislation, or at least claims to, because, frankly, so many of their mates in the industry super fund sector actually get benefit from it. In fact, many of them argue in favour of it for that reason. Instead, they want to create a false proxy war because they want to be seen to be against it because it's proposed by a coalition government, when it will actually cement the power and the influence of many large superannuation funds, which, as I said, as somebody who's a Liberal, who believes in the decentralisation of power and not the concentration of economic, social or political or cultural power in the hands of the few, has deep concerns around that. But there are also things in this bill that other members, the members on the other side of the chamber, don't support, and I do understand why that is. They don't support tests being put on how members' money is being spent to make sure it advances the financial interests of those members. I do understand why, because they see superannuation money as their money, as fund managers' money, as money to be laundered through the unions, through marketing fees and the like, to make its way into the hands of the Australian Labor Party. It is a broken system that needs to be fixed, and I can understand why the Labor Party will fight that effort to fix that broken system every step of the way. And we hear that confected outrage from the member for Fraser, sorry, was the former member for Fraser, Fenner, the member for Fenner now, and his opposition to the Your Future, Your Super legislation, because he said the Economics Committee rightly follows up on various superannuation funds and their misconduct. But he actually runs interference in those committees to support those doing wrong. We see this particularly when we question industry super funds and outline how they're misusing members' money, reactivating low balance inactive accounts and using it then to be harvested for fees and insurance premiums that they are not entitled to, and not following through their legal obligations to pass that money on to the Australian Taxation Office so it can be protected. I can understand why the member for Fenner dislikes us calling that conduct out, because it means less money, less fees and less opportunity for the Labor Party to launder Australians' money.
The debate is erupted in accordance with Standing Order 43. The debate may be resumed at a later hour.
The member for Goldstein.
Goldstein, Deputy Speaker, and it's wonderful to be back speaking on this legislation, because it is so important to make sure that we get proper assessment of laws that associate that overgovern superannuation. Because, as I was saying before, I was interrupted by question time and 90-second statements. The system is broken. It's designed and organised to advance the interests of the few at the expense of the many. And members of the Labor Party know exactly why it is, because they set it up that way, because what super funds do is launder money through marketing expenses, through to unions and allied parties, and then through to the Australian Labor Party, which is why if you come into this chamber, Deputy Speaker, if you raise criticisms of organised labour and unions today, a few people on the Labor side will get a little bit grumble and a little bit upset. But if you criticise the super system, they will go into all-out war, because they know it is the lifeblood and it is coming at the expense of Australians and their retirement savings and at the expense of their wages to bankroll the interests of the Labor Party. And the more we call this out, the angrier they get, which means it makes me more determined, because there is nothing they will not do to steal your money from your accounts and your super fund to advance their interests. That is what is at the heart of this legislation, trying to break
apart. The member for Goldstein will just resume his seat for a moment. The member for Solomon will cease interjecting. Member for Goldstein.
That is what is at the heart of this legislation. That is why they will fight it at every step of the way, and we will not stop until we call it out and we stop the misinformation, the misallocation and the misuse of Australian superannuation's money. And what we hear from the Shadow Minister for Superannuation in this debate is the most hysterical and ridiculous allegations, claiming that the provisions in the bill which say the Treasurer can override the waste and mismanagement of Australian superannuation funds towards activities that have nothing to do with retirement savings, absolutely nothing. And that is what is happening right now in the waste that is going towards the New Daily, so they can buy the interests of journalists who then go on to taxpayer-funded organisations to misrepresent the interests and the issues that affect retiring Australians. There is no integrity at the heart of this system. There is no integrity at the focus of how they are trying to buy off Australians through the system that they have designed. And if you want to hear the hypocrisy in this chamber from the Labor Party, they claim they're against the illegal payments provisions in this bill. But dare them to say, OK, let's remove the provision that's already in superannuation legislation, which says it's illegal to use your own money to buy your own home, and they say that must stay in the law at all costs. That is how hypocritical they are. If you genuinely believe that there should be no provisions around the limitation on how members' money should be able to be spent by super funds, then allow Australians to use their superannuation money to buy their own home. Because you know, as I know, that the foundation of financial security in people's working life and retirement is home first, super second. But they do not want that, because they know it means empowering Australians, their families, to take control of their financial interests for their own lives. And that is why we believe in it so strongly, and we will not stop fighting. Because these laws go to the heart of what we stand for and whom we want to empower. The debate around superannuation is not just one about retirement incomes and savings, as critical as it may be. It is a debate about power and who we want to empower. Do we want to empower fund managers or families? Fund managers on the opposition side, families on the Liberal side. That is who we are. That is what we stand for. When Australians look at their finances, they should be able to make a choice. They should be able to choose how they spend their money and prioritise their financial interests. And the hard data shows it very clearly. In 1992, there were about $280 billion in retirement savings in Australia. Since then, it has increased by a factor of 1,400. 1,400. And just in case there is any ambiguity about that, Deputy Speaker, 1,400 times. And what has been the decline in the dependence on the pension over that same time frame? 1,400, no. 1,300, no. 1,200, no. 1,000, no. 100%, no. 8%, no. The answer, Deputy Speaker, according to the Callaghan report, is it has gone from 67% of Australian retirees needing support from the pension to 65%. Have you ever seen a mass accumulation of wealth in the hands and control of the few, of the fund managers at the expense of Australian families for so little gain? No, but the Labor Party likes it that way because they know through it they can control and bring organised capital and organised labour together to decide the future of this country, bypassing this parliament, because they use that capital to buy ownership of companies and they then impose on them their own values, bypassing this very chamber elected by the people of Australia, because they know that under the fund management system, no one's elected. They're just appointed by their mates. And they threaten and bully any business in this country who dare stand up to them, like they threaten and bully and want to intimidate this chamber. And that is why we won't get up, because this isn't just a debate about retirement savings, though it is. It's a debate about the power in our country and where it rests, with the people, with families, with elected representatives, or simply in the hands of the few and the fund managers. And that's why they like it that way, and that's why they hate this legislation so much. Because they see it's a break on their control to empower and in turn empower Australians instead. And we have to keep fighting, because that has always been at the heart of the structure of the Labor Party. They want a corporate estate. Big capital, big unions, big government working together at your expense, where the people of Australia have no control over their own lives because they want Australians to be serfs to their own superannuation funds. Let's look at the facts, Deputy Speaker. They argue that Australians shouldn't be able to use their superannuation to be able to buy their own homes, get the first rung on the ladder, to be able to provide the foundations for retirement security as well as their working life. Yet, listen to their criticism. Let's see their criticism when CBUS spends $800 million of your Australian money to buy properties that they own, that they will rent to you. This is a corrupt system that needs to be called out. They will use your money, the people of Australia's money, to buy homes that they own, that they'll rent back to you. But if you dare stand up and say, I want to use my super to my own home, you'll say destroying the system. This system is designed to favour the few at the expense of the many. And they only have to take small clips along the way. When you've got 26 million legally compelled to contribute money into an account, they only have to take $5, $10 a year, laundered through the unions and laundered through marketing expenses, and head back to the Labor Party to take a massive share of the wealth of the nation that they control. And that is what happens every day. And if you try and breathe any accountability into this system, they fight it every step of the way. And they ought to be ashamed of themselves. Go and look at the House Economics Committee. In this term of Parliament, we've continually asked superannuation funds about their expenditure. And what do the unions do? And what do the industry funds do? They refuse to answer them. They launder their money through IFM investors, the fund of super funds, and as soon as it goes there, they say, we're not accountable to the Parliament of the people of Australia anymore. How can you stand by this system and the corruption and the misuse?
Will resume his seat. The member for Solomon will either take his seat, sit in here quietly, or leave the chamber. The choice is yours before I go to the next step.
How can you stand by this system?
The member for Goldstein.
Massively disempowers Australians, launders money into different funds where it becomes unaccountable, and then they refuse to answer questions to the Parliament of the people of Australia. And that is what happens. They keep things secret from the people of Australia while coming into this chamber and demanding we are compelling the people of Australia to give them more money. It is so corrupt. It is so founded on fleecing people and their wages, as the Secretary of the Treasury said in estimates only yesterday, where every increase in superannuation contributions comes at the expense of the wages of Australians today. And if you dare point that out, you get hounded down by members of the opposition, by the industry funds who use your hundreds of millions of dollars, nearly $500 million over the past 5 years in advertising and marketing campaigns to make the claim that they're saints. when they're not. This is a symbol of your money being taken from you and controlled by others. And this bill doesn't fix all of those problems. But this bill at least requires these funds to make sure when they take your money, Australians' money, that it has to actually be used for your interest. A novel concept, I know. And the more we see of that, the more we'll get accountability and the less fleecing of the people of
member's
Australia.
time has expired.